Hello, and welcome back to Bills with Luke Scorzel. This is episode 28, and we're going to be doing an in-depth analysis of the White House's proposed immigration plan and policy. We're going to look into DACA, chain migration, catch and release, and many other policies in our current immigration system. So stay tuned for a very in-depth episode on that will keep you informed and up to date with all of the news of today. But first, before we start, we need a special drum roll because we have a special announcement regarding Patreon. We have two new $15 donors. So first we have Tiana Shao, a wonderful $15 donor, and Mike Scorzel, another wonderful donor. Thank you so much to the both of you for donating $15 a month to the Bills with Luke Scorzel podcast. Very, very helpful. They will get for that special shout-outs at the beginning and end of each shows. They'll be involved in any special giveaways and promotions that we have. They'll get a sticker from the Bills with Luke Scorzel podcast and all the rewards from any other tiers. So behind-the-scenes video content from the $5 tier, a sticker from that tier as well, early access to all podcast episodes, including this one from the $2 per month tier, access to the mailbag, and all of that for just $15. And you can go over and head over to Patreon and become a donor for as little as $2, where you will get early access to all podcast episodes, and you might just get a sticker in the mail. With that said, I'm Luke Scorzel, and you're listening to Bills. All right, and we are back. So we're going to be going into the immigration plan proposed by the White House in great depth. And this will lead us into a history, really, of our more recent history of our immigration system, including, again, catch and release, chain migration, DACA, and a few other things. So first, we're going to go through a few of the points on the White House website, and then we'll actually analyze certain ones that are very prominent in our current political debate. All right, so the White House's policy starts with border security, so that is also where we will start with this. So first, we have that there will be a $25 billion trust fund for the border wall system, ports of entry and exit, northern border improvements and enhancements as well. Second, that we are going to appropriate funds to hire new Department of Homeland Security personnel, immigrations and custom enforcement attorneys, immigration judges, prosecutors, and other law enforcement professionals. We will talk about this later in the episode as well, but there is a large backlog of people waiting for their cases to be heard in our federal immigration courts. So very important there. The next point under border security is to reform the hiring and pay systems to retain any critical personnel. Then, more significantly, what we're going to delve into here is the policy of ending catch and release. Quote on the page, deter illegal entry by ending dangerous statutory imposed catch and release and by closing legal loopholes that have eroded our ability to secure the immigration system and protect public safety. So catch and release is a policy where undocumented immigrants caught for their status are released while waiting a hearing with an immigration judge. Obviously, it takes a long time to actually get into the trial and meet with the judge and be tried, so it is rather infeasible to detain an immigrant for that long and a person for that long, and very expensive as well. So President George W. Bush actually ended the practice in 2006 when his Department of Homeland Security Secretary Michael Chertoff announced that it would go out of practice. But then it is disputed whether or not President Obama actually reinstated the practice with his own Department of Homeland Security. A November 20th, 2014 memorandum titled Policies for the Apprehension, Detention, and Removal of Undocumented Immigrants changed how ICE was to handle interactions with undocumented immigrants. And when you look at it in detail, it actually somewhat appears to be like these previously mentioned catch and release policies. So, quote, it starts off with, due to limited resources, Department of Homeland Security and its components cannot respond to all immigration violations or remove all persons illegally in the United States. the Department of Homeland Security must exercise prosecutorial discretion in the enforcement of the law. And this prosecutorial discretion is really what gives a lot of leeway for immigrations and customs enforcement agents when they are detaining someone and deciding whether or not to charge them, because it is up to them whether or not to prosecute and press for charges. So they have the ability to decide whether or not to prosecute them again. So the memorandum from the Obama administration set forth 3 priorities for civil immigration enforcement and who exactly should be deported in what order. So number 1, the first priority were threats to national security, border security, and public safety. Number 2, misdemeanants and new immigration violators. And number 3, any other immigration violations. So under the first category, we had aliens who were engaged in or suspected of terrorism or espionage, those apprehended at the border, ports of entry, those engaging in organized criminal gangs, those convicted of a felony or an aggravated felony. And they must be prioritized unless they qualify for asylum or another form of relief under our laws. Unless there are compelling and exceptional factors that clearly indicate that that person is not a threat to national security, border security, or public safety. So essentially it means that ICE can deport them if they see that they are enough of a threat, but if they are not deemed to be unsafe, then maybe they don't need to deport them and maybe they can do something else. So that's the first priority. The second priority is for misdemeanants and new immigration violators. This includes aliens convicted of 3 or more misdemeanor offenses other than traffic offenses, or those where their immigration status is the primary element of the conviction. It is also including those who have committed significant misdemeanors, including domestic violence, sexual abuse or exploitation, theft, unlawful possession or use of a firearm, drug distribution or trafficking, DUIs, or any other offense for which they were sentenced for more than 90 days. This second priority also includes any undocumented immigrants apprehended anywhere in the United States after unlawfully entering or re-entering the United States, and those who have not been in the United States continuously since January 1st, 2014. So the second priority category still includes those who are essentially very dangerous criminals, drug dealers, abusers, and firearm dealers, and so they are still a very high priority. But as we will see, they're not the most prosecuted. So the third priority includes all other immigration violations, and they should generally be removed unless they qualify for asylum or another form of relief under our laws and other factors that suggest that they should not be an enforcement priority. So this, I guess, essentially includes everyone else and is up for, the prosecutorial discretion that we talked about earlier on whether or not they should be removed. So in 2015, 86% of all removals were in the priority 1 category. Those who were a threat to national security, had committed, were involved in terrorism or other gang organizations. 8% were priority 2, those with 3 or more misdemeanor offenses, those involved in domestic violence, sexual abuse or exploitation, theft, unlawful possession of a firearm. And then only 4% were priority 3, so any other violations of our immigration law. So the memorandum also set forth the rules for detaining illegal aliens. The rules are essentially what catch and release is. So, quote, absent extraordinary circumstances, field office directors should not expend detention resources on aliens who are known to be suffering from serious physical or mental illness, who are disabled, elderly, pregnant, or nursing, who demonstrate that they are the primary caretakers of children or to an infirm person, or whose detention is not in the public interest. So very specific up until that last part, when we see that those whose detention is not in the public interest is basically up to wide interpretation and is really to be taken on a case-by-case basis, which again allows for that ability to decide who ought to be left in the country and not prosecuted versus who should be. But it does set the mood and the tone that, again, they don't have, or they weren't being funded with the adequate amount of resources to be able to take care of all of these cases. We have to remember that this is, again, just for detention and not for deportation, so being kept until the trial actually starts. In fiscal year 2015, 97,000 detainers were issued, 86,000 in 2016, and a massive increase to 142,400 in fiscal year 2017, almost doubled from 2016 to 17, which was the year that President Donald Trump took office, and he has been very, very stringent on immigration, at least his rhetoric. So in 2017, 8,170 of those detainers were denied by local law enforcement agencies. So what that means is that the federal government requested that a local law enforcement agency and local municipality detain an undocumented immigrant, and they actually refused. So this would be the sanctuary city concept, or sanctuary state if you're talking about California. So this 8,170 number of denied detainers was an increase of around 5,000 from fiscal year 2016. So a large increase in cities and local municipalities acting as sanctuary cities or states from the Obama administration to the Trump administration from 2016 to 2017. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, in 2013, out of the 722,000 ICE encounters with undocumented immigrants, only 195,000 of those resulted in a charge. That's just 27%. 527,000, or 73%, were actually released and not charged with anything. So this number of those who were released and not charged after having an encounter with Immigration and Customs Enforcement varies significantly based on geographic location and relation to the border. So in San Diego, for example, only 5% of encounters resulted in a release. San Diego is just under an hour to the Mexican border for most parts, and sometimes even 5 minutes. In Buffalo, New York, however, very far from the southern border, but closer to the northern border, 99% of those encountered were actually released. In Los Angeles, the rate was 82%. So essentially, the closer to the southern border, the lower the release rate. All right, so next on the White House's agenda is to ensure the detention and removal of criminal aliens, gang members, violent offenders, and aggravated felons. So remember before we talked about the national average release rate of 73% in 2013. The number when the encounter is with an illegal immigrant with a criminal record is much, much lower. The national average there is just 35%. And while that is still high, it is much lower again from the national average. So essentially, the White House and the Trump administration hopes to lower that number even farther. So the Obama administration's priorities were discussed earlier and resulted in an increased number of administrative arrests of a criminal alien or an alien with a known criminal conviction. However, from 2016 to 2017, there was a 12% increase in the number of arrests of someone with a criminal record. And that is, again, due to likely the Donald Trump taking office after Obama and really changing the sentiment regarding immigration in the United States. Next on the White House's agenda is ensuring the prompt removal of illegal border crossers regardless of country of origin. Not too much for us to talk about there. Next was to deter visa overstays with efficient removal. So this is the much talked about crowd of people who are actually overstaying their visa. And the Department of Homeland Security actually has pretty good information about this. So they say, quote, of the more than 21.6 million visa waiver program visitors expected to depart the United States in fiscal year 2016, 147,300 of those overstayed their terms of admission. That's a rate of around 1.47%, which is low, but still a significant number of people overstaying their visas in the United States. So the Trump administration, again, hopes to lower that number even farther, whether the people will be granted amnesty and a longer visa to stay in the United States, or whether they will be removed if they have a criminal record, tying into some of the other stuff we've talked about, is up to whatever immigration bill is proposed and passed by President Trump and the United States Congress. Next on the agenda is to ensure that synthetic drugs, including fentanyl, do not enter the United States. So really, it's absolutely crazy when we look at the drug trends. I will leave a link to a study by the National Institute on Drug Abuse in the blog post, but simply looking at the graph is absolutely insane. The number of overdoses on synthetic opioids exponentially increases after from 2013 to 2015. So it goes from around 15,200 maybe in 2014 to 19,900 in 2015, and even more so than that in the early 2000s, around 2000, the number was actually very close to zero, and now is up past almost 20,000. So a significant increase in the number of overdoses in the United States. Overall, drug overdoses of all kinds have increased from about 16,950 in 1999 to 52,400 in 2015. That is a tremendous growth over the past few years. I'm just doing a little calculation. So that's so the number of drug overdoses increased by 3.25 times from 1999 to 2015. And so the White House is really hoping to decrease that, whether it is from immigration from the southern border or not, is up to question. So the fact is that fentanyl's main country of origin isn't actually on our physical border. Rather, it is from China. So Reuters reports that illegal shipments of the drugs are actually coming through the U.S. Postal Service and not necessarily through the southern borders. So here's the article from Reuters. Illegal shipments of the powerful and addictive opioid fentanyl are pouring into the United States by mail from China and the U.S. Postal Service. The U.S. Postal Service must step up the use of high-tech detection methods to fight the problem, according to a congressional report unveiled on Wednesday. So, a year-long probe by the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Investigation Subcommittee found there is an easy access for buyers in the United States to purchase fentanyl through the internet. The drugs are mailed in by labs in China who consume them and are essentially middlemen. According to the report, the U.S. Postal Service has failed to widely deploy a system to capture advanced electronic data about packages destined for American ports. They are prioritizing obtaining this from the largest volume foreign posts, which collectively account for over 90% of inbound volumes. So there was an identification of 500 online transactions involving fentanyl with a street value of approximately $766 million. U.S. fatalities linked to opioids, including fentanyl, have been rising dramatically and totaled more than 42,000 in 2016, according to government data. So again, not all of that is coming over from the southern border as you would expect, but actually through other means as well, which would be worth looking into. But the drug still has a pathway into the United States, along with other drugs, through the southern border in the United States. So in early January 2018, President Trump signed the International Narcotics Trafficking Emergency Response by Detecting Incoming Contraband with Technology Act, a long name, and it was put forth by Democratic Senator Ed Markey to give Border Patrol agents extra technology to help them identify and seize illicit fentanyl before it enters the country. So that already makes a move toward halting some of the drugs coming over from China as well, not just from our southern border. But the bill appropriated $9 million to ensure that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection had enough resources to prevent, detect, and intercept the unlawful importation of fentanyl, other synthetic opioids, and other narcotics and psychoactive substances. So the White House is again hoping to cut back on some of the shipment of illegal and illicit drugs into the United States because, boy, you need to look at these charts. The opioid crisis is just insane at the moment. The next reform proposed by the White House, they are looking to institute immigration court reforms and improve efficiency to prevent fraud and abuse. Currently, there are tons and tons of cases in our federal immigration court system. According to the Justice Department's 2016 statistics yearbook, between 2015 and 2016, there was a 14% increase in the total number of cases received by federal immigration courts. There were a total of 287,500 cases in 2015, and in 2016 that number grew to 328,100 cases, again in 2016. Of that number in 2016, only 83% of them were completed. That is down from 91% being completed in 2015. However, the total number completed actually increased from 262,900 in 2015 to 273,400 in 2016, but the proportion still dropped by around 9%. So obviously we're seeing a large increase in the number of cases headed to our federal immigration courts, and it is actually becoming a fairly large problem in the United States at the moment. So federal immigration courts face massive pending caseloads at the end of each year. The Justice Department reported that there has actually been a 58% increase in the number of pending cases since 2012. As of 2016, there were a total of 518,500 pending cases in the entire United States. That's 500,000 cases, an incredible amount. And the Washington Post reported that the immigration court backlog as of October 2017 is more than 630,000 cases. And part of this is due to really a lack of resources. So the Washington Post also reported that the Justice Department is aiming to slash the massive immigration court backlog in half by 2020 by adding judges, upgrading technology, and refusing to tolerate repeated delays in deportation cases. So they are actually, so here's an interesting line. The department will also have a no dark courtrooms policy, the official said, explaining that there are at least 100 courtrooms nationwide that are empty every Friday because of judges' alternate work schedules. The Justice Department is tapping retired judges to fill those courts. The immigration court overhaul comes as the Trump administration is carrying out policies that could generate even more cases in the coming months. They say arrests and deportations from the interior of the United States are rising sharply, and the Trump administration has ended Obama-era policies for some undocumented immigrants, including DACA, which we will get to, and it appears that Trump is actually not totally ending DACA, which perfectly leads us into the next step on the White House's immigration plan, which is DACA legalization. So here we go. Quote, DACA legalization. Provide legal status for DACA recipients and other DACA-eligible illegal immigrants, adjusting the time frame to encompass a total population of approximately 1.8 million individuals, which is over double the amount that are currently protected by Deferred Action for childhood arrivals. So what is DACA? Well, it is an Obama-era executive action that protects immigrants who are brought to the country illegally as minors. The program has given approximately 800,000 young undocumented immigrants work permits and protection from deportation since 2012. And earlier this year and in 2017, Trump and his administration signaled that they might not actually renew DACA when it expired this upcoming March, and it actually was cause for the government shutdown in late January. They did not have a vote because the Democrats wanted there to be a vote on DACA, a bill on that, but the Republicans refused if they would not give up some other things. So the White House is actually then calling for this legalization. So getting into the policy of DACA itself, there are a lot of provisions regarding dates and how long you've had to have been in the United States. Had to have been under 31, the age of 31 as of June 15th, 2012, came into the United States before reaching your 16th birthday, continuously resided in the United States, and not have had lawful status on June 25th, 2012. And to be eligible, an immigrant must also be currently enrolled in school, have graduated or obtained a certificate of completion from high school, and received a general education development certificate, or have been honorably discharged from the Coast Guard or Armed Forces of the United States. And finally, to be eligible, you must not have been convicted of a felony, significant misdemeanor, nor of 3 or more misdemeanors, and not have otherwise posed a threat to national security or public safety. So now we have this large group of people who are vulnerable. So taking a look into that group, we have a few facts from Pew Research here. As of September 4th, 2017, there were 690,000 unauthorized immigrants enrolled in DACA. The 800,000 number was those who are eligible for DACA. The most popular countries of origin, Mexico by far with 79.4%, followed by El Salvador with just 3.7%, Guatemala with just 2.6%, Honduras with 2.3%, and Peru and South Korea both with 1.1%. In regards to where in the United States had the most enrollees, 45% of DACA recipients resided in California or Texas. The Los Angeles, Long Beach, Anaheim metropolitan area in California had the largest number of enrollees with 89,900. This was followed by New York, Jersey City with 47,200 enrollees. As far as other demographics, 66% of the enrollees were between the ages of 16 and 25. 83% are single, 15% are married, 1% divorced, and the majority are female with 53%. So just a breakdown of who exactly is included within that program. And then another statistic from the Brookings Institute that is actually interesting when asking whether or not there should be deportation and removal. 72% of all applicants have lived in the United States for at least 10 years. Whether that number is continuous or not is unknown, but worth noting when talking about removing someone who's been living here for over a decade. The Cato Institute reported that the elimination of DACA would cost the economy over $200 billion and the government over $60 billion. They say, quote, "Most of this high cost is driven by the fact that the Dreamers tend to do well in school and as a result do well in the job market after completing their education, and thus removing them from the country would remove these jobs and the money coming from that." All right, and next on the White House's agenda is protect the nuclear family by emphasizing close familial relationships. This is code for ending chain migration. The plan is to limit family sponsorships to spouses and minor children only for both citizens and LRPs, and ending extended family chain migration. These changes will be applied prospectively, not retroactively, by processing the backlog, which means that essentially Trump's policies here would not go into effect for over 17 years. We'll get into that a little bit in a second. So first, there are actually some very interesting statistics regarding chain migration from the Center for Immigration Studies. Every year there are, or not every year, there have been 33 million immigrants admitted to the United States between 1981 and 2016. around 20 million of those came via chain migration. That means that in the period between 2016 and 1981, which is a 35-year period, 61% of our immigrants came via chain migration and were brought by one person admitted legally to the United States. So some more statistics that you just don't necessarily think of so much. On average, each legal immigrant sponsors 3.45 additional immigrants. This number varies significantly by country. So immigrants from Mexico bring an average of 6.38 additional immigrants. From China, bring an additional 6.24 people. From India, 5.11, and from the Philippines, 5.07. So those are the top countries of origin who bring the most people over, with each one legally admitted immigrant. And so the Trump administration then wants to limit that so that extended family members are not able to be brought over, which would seemingly decrease those numbers significantly. Current law regarding chain migration has led to an older immigrant population. From the Center for Immigration Studies, they say, quote, in recent years, about 21% of family migrants were above the age of 50, a rate that is more than 24% higher than before. And they said that this trend has significant implications for the fiscal consequences of immigration and bringing an elderly population to the United States. And again, a result of this ability to bring extended family over as well. The next part that was looked at by the Center for Immigration Studies was the effect of enacting amnesty for the 700,000 DACA recipients and simultaneously having chain migration. Enacting amnesty for those 700,000 DACA recipients alone would double the number of additional immigrants into the United States. So if we, I just have my calculator handy here because why not? But so we'll take 700,000 DACA recipients approximately and multiply that by the average 3.45. Obviously, this isn't going to be exactly accurate. 2,415,000 new immigrants would be admitted, and that's obviously a very rudimentary breakdown of that. You would have more, obviously, countries that are more prevalent and who have higher numbers of people coming over, and less from countries who are only bringing over 2 additional people with each immigrant. But just the gist. They say that it would double the number of immigrants in the United States. So they gave some recommendations for actually then reducing that number. So one would be to enact amnesty for DACA eligible people, and more so that the Trump administration states, the 1.8 million number, and then reduce the number of chain migration immigrants. That would mean limiting it to only immediate family, as the Trump administration has proposed. Second, the Center for Immigration Studies says that to eliminate the diversity visa lottery program, which allows 50,000 people to come over each year. We discussed that in a previous episode. If you'd like to go check that out, it's the episode on the RAISE Act, a very interesting episode, I believe, where we go through that in depth. So I won't really talk about it too much here, but that we'll get into a little bit later. So if both of these proposals were met, enacting amnesty and limiting the chain migration to immediate family, and then eliminating the diversity visa lottery program, then the Center for Immigration Studies predicts that immigration would be reduced by 135,000 people per year, or 13%. Now, whether or not the goal here is to decrease or increase immigration, it's just what they had. So then it's, again, applied prospectively, not retroactively, by processing this backlog, which means that all of those people who are already on the wait list to come into the country through legal means would be processed, and then after every single one was processed, then Trump's plan would go into effect. So according to USA Today, under Trump's plan, it will take around 17 years to actually finish processing the family-based green cards already on the books. So those who are already on the list for being considered for legalization and citizenship would be able to bring their additional family members based on the previous policy. And once that list was exhausted, then Trump's policy would kick in. So in effect, it's more of an attempt, it seems, to almost please his base, but not really have the consequences for actually instituting a no, it starts here and now, and sorry if you're already on the list. So there are so many people on the list, and we'll just take a look at the USA Today article that was published looking at this. So it says, even if Trump can convince Congress to pass his plan for limiting family-based immigration, which he calls chain migration, it would take over a decade for his proposal to actually reduce legal immigration, according to some analysis. We're thinking it would be 10 to 12 years before all 4 million of these people are actually out of the system, said Andrew Arthur, resident fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, the think tank that we've been quoting. And that's on top of the 1.8 million people getting amnesty. So the Center for Immigration Studies is looking to decrease immigration. I believe it's stated on their website. But yeah, the fact is that there are so many people in this backlog that it would not go into effect for a very long time. Trump's policy would not. So interesting to look at and analyze what exactly the reasons behind that were. But we'll see. It's all tentative and likely would be changed around a little bit if it actually makes it into Congress on that plan. So lastly, the White House gives the choice of eliminating the diversity visa lottery program and then repurposing those visas. So we already talked about the diversity visa lottery program, but we did not talk about repurposing those visas. So that would actually not decrease the net migration by this 50,000 number, at least from the diversity visa lottery program, because those numbers would just go somewhere else for either merit-based consideration or whatever you would like to say for that. And we will find out with whatever plan is coming. But it is interesting to note that it is not actually getting rid of those, but actually putting them somewhere else, and you would still have that 50,000 number on the book. So that's about it for the White House's immigration plan. I think it's very interesting to look over and analyze a lot of these policies. So we talked a lot about this, about a 7-page script for today. A lot of facts. You can go check out the blog post on the edgeofideas.com, and it will have all of the links to the websites that we've mentioned and everything that you need for all of that. Thanks for tuning in. Again, thank you to Tiana and Mike for becoming $15 a month Patreon supporters. I am very, very greatly appreciated, and I would love it if you went over there and even just checked out what it means to give $1 or $2 a month. You are supporting my education. You're supporting the podcast. You're helping us grow. Really spread the message of looking at the facts and the policies instead of the politics. Because again, I think that when we looked at a lot of this today, we learned that the political talk is one thing, but when you get down to the actual policies, you're getting something a little bit different, and something that's not so hot topic partisan as you would expect, because you hear a lot about Donald Trump wanting to rid the country of the DACA recipients, but then when you check the White House website and it says that they're actually going to try and provide legal status for 1.8 million individuals, which is 1 million individuals more than what DACA actually covered, then you get a little different of a picture. And whether that was ever actually put into place or not is up for debate, but it is interesting to look at the policy. And obviously Donald Trump in his talk and a lot of the things that he does are also up for debate, but you really do have to look at the policy. So that's what we're trying to spread on the Bills That Luke Swears All podcast, whether it's from a Democrat or Republican. Look at the policy, analyze the facts, and see what it does, and see where it takes you and the country. So thanks for tuning in. Be sure to go over to Twitter at the Edge of Ideas. We are approaching 8,000 followers. Very happy to have such an active and loving following. You guys are the best. Go over to the edgeofideas.com/subscribe to get email notifications when new episodes are out. And lastly, head over to iTunes and leave us a nice, honest review and let us know what you think of the show. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next time. I'm Luke Scorzel, and you're listening to Bills.